AITA for not wanting to participate in mourning my boss. By you, conspiracy robots. Technically, she wasn't my immediate boss, but she was my boss's boss. She was only like 50, but had a stroke at home and fell down the stairs. She broke her spine, neck, was in a coma, and was on life support for 2 days before they pulled the plug and she died. This death, like most, was sudden and unexpected, and people at my job started wearing black ribbons on their uniforms. A coworker saw that I did not have one on mine and offered me one, to which I replied, "No thanks." I received a few glares from other coworkers in the area. I caved a few minutes later and ended up putting the ribbon on. I didn't have much interaction with my boss's boss, but when I did, she was a real bitch. She truly was a horrible person. A week before she passed away, I heard her talking to my immediate boss about a coworker who was out sick because she had a miscarriage. This woman had the nerve to say, "Shit happens, but she still needs to come to work." Anyway, I don't wish death upon anyone, and I'm not glad she died, but I'm not going to pretend like she was a terrific person. AITA here?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't say most deaths are sudden and unexpected. That seems like a little justifying in a way.
Sure, they're like, well, clearly every death is a little kooky.
Right. She's like, it's like they're covering their ass there a little bit. Also, brutal way to die. That honestly feeds into a little bit of the mourning happening.
There's almost an additional trauma in the fact that how she died was so horrific.
Even if you don't necessarily like somebody, if you hear that story, you're like, wow, geez, I mean, that's fucking brutal.
This person doesn't like their boss's boss, and the sort of indictment of them is that they're a real bitch and a, quote, horrible person. And they give this one example describing a coworker who was out sick because she had a miscarriage that they said shit happens, but she still needs to come to work. How do we know that this person is as horrible as this quote makes them seem?
We have to go on a person defending themselves. And when you defend yourself against somebody who you think is an asshole, you're always like, and then they were like, and so that's tough.
This quote is so bad, but is that really their thesis statement? Or maybe they were doing a little bit of a joke. They can be a bitch and make a bad joke every now and again and not be a truly horrible person.
The best person in the world has said something shitty. You can catch people on their worst day, and then that's your whole frame of reference for them.
Right.
Which I think happens to celebrities a lot.
Okay.
Where, I know it's weird, but it happens, you'll be out with somebody, and they'll be like, "Oh, I met Gary Payton. He's an asshole because he spilled a drink on me, didn't apologize." But maybe Gary Payton had just gotten a call to be like, "Oh, your wife is sick" or something, and then but you don't have any other opportunity to ever meet Gary Payton again, and for him to make that up to you. So now you just have a nice story about a person that everybody goes, "Oh shoot, I thought that was going to be a nice guy."
Right. Who's Gary Payton?
Oh, he plays basketball. He's a famous basketball player.
Is he famous?
He was famous from
Gary
the 90s.
Payton?
Gary Payton.
I've never heard of him.
He played for the Seattle Supersonics.
Gary Payton. Listen, he's no Larry Bird, folks.
I can't believe you don't know Gary Payton.
Sophie Lesser writes, "No assholes here. Honestly, pretending grief impacted you when it doesn't is a trash move that does just as much damage." So first of all, I don't think it's a trash move. I think it's a politeness. I think if I go to someone's funeral, if I go to my dad's friend's funeral, I don't necessarily care about my dad's friend.
Yeah.
I'm going to put on the show and pretend to be sad.
To me, what Sophie's getting at here is the idea of when people make a big show of grieving somebody that they weren't that close with. If Conspiracy Robot was like, "Oh my God," and threw herself on the floor, it's like, yeah, I don't think it's just as much damage, but it's a shitty move, and people do that move a lot.
So this is the move where it's like they're making the death about them.
Right, and you're standing there maybe as a really good friend being like, you didn't even really know. You were like an acquaintance.
I did. They were at the Snapple machine, and I saw them get the peach tea Snapple. That peach tea Snapple was what I get, Chris.
Right, exactly. And then I think that is a danger, and people pull that move a lot. But I don't think that's what's happening. I think Sophie's putting too much on it. Like you said, if you went to your dad's friend's funeral, you'd be sad. You would I don't even think you'd have to be sad. You just have to be respectful. And if you went there and you were like, and somebody was like, "Oh, he was a good guy," you'd be like, "I don't care. I don't know him." Then you'd be the asshole.
The tone of the respect is a sadness. It's a heaviness. Likewise, even if it wasn't directly at the person, you shouldn't really laugh at a funeral. It's not like you're laughing at them. It's just not a time. That's what I mean by bringing on the sadness. I'm not saying try to find the sadness and try to make yourself cry by thinking of the time you saw the Rugrats 2 and the brothers get separated. I'm saying that's sort of the tone that you're going for, right?
Sometimes people are laughing at a funeral. I mean, sometimes you're telling stories about the person and you're laughing, crying. What I was thinking about this thing was rolling with it. And rolling with it to me means taking that fucking ribbon and putting it on.
It costs nothing to wear the black ribbon. Takes no effort to put it on. You weren't doing it for her. You weren't doing it for the bee. You were doing it for all the people who may have been negatively impacted by her passing. And that was kind of why I wanted to talk about like how horrible of a person could this gal have been, because I think, look, even the worst person in the world has a couple people that they positively impacted.
The thing that makes you stand out now is being the person who said no thanks to a mourning ribbon. So remember, Sophie's like, oh, when you're out sadding, you're making it about yourself, like we were just talking about.
Yes.
The flip side is acting this way,
right.
You also made this about yourself.
Yes.
This is now about you. You've made yourself stand out in a very negative way.
Now, Connie Baxter does not agree. She said regarding fitting in with the coworkers might like tuna sandwiches too, but that doesn't mean I have to eat one in support. Give me a break.
False equivalency, if I've ever heard
that
it.
Is not the same freaking thing.
Imagine your coworker who's like, hey, I love tuna sandwiches, and if you guys support me, you'll eat all the tuna sandwiches that I've brought for everybody. It's not even close to the same thing.
I would say that we could come up with a situation that is pretty similar. If someone was having a tuna sandwich party and they were passing out little tuna sandwich stickers, and you walk into the room where the tuna sandwich party is going down, like put on a sticker. Even if you don't like the tuna sandwich, like be part of the vibe. Have you ever heard the phrase, don't yuck someone's yum?
Yeah.
Which is really roll with the punches,
yeah.
Go with the vibes. Like stepping on it, whether it's grief or whether it's positive, it's an asshole move.
You take the ribbon, you wear it for a day. You don't have to take it home. You don't have to mean it. That's the thing, is you're reading the room.
Yes, read the room.
And that's all that's being asked of you. And nobody needs you to go home and write in a diary entry about this person or like write their eulogy or anything like that. It's a ribbon. Who cares?
Who cares? Don Strong writes, why isn't she at work? Death is no excuse.
Okay, Don.
Got her.
I think Don's the asshole there.
The asshole. Frank Cabello writes, some people effing suck and some people need to be reminded of that even after they passed. And I don't care how much of an a-hole that makes me. Death doesn't absolve shitty aspects of a person under any circumstance.
This is the guy who's going to bust in a funeral and tell the worst stories about people's lives. I get it. I think that we can't write hagiographies of people, but give it a second.
What did you say? Hagiographies?
Hagiographies.
What's that?
When you tell a story about somebody that only highlights the positive and it embellishes it to a point that it makes it almost like mythological. You see it a lot with like famous people who maybe were kind of dicks, but the story that gets written about them is that they were wonderful and amazing and there's no faults thrown in there ever, ever, ever.
Oh, God. Weren't you telling me you're working on a hagiography about Gary Payton?
Yeah, I swear, people are going to listen to this and think you're dumb as hell, dude. I think give it a second, though. I get it. I'm a proponent of, like, warts and all stories being told about people. But if somebody just dies, you don't have to be the guy who's like, well, yeah, fine, but also they fucking sucked, you know?
Right. Aaron B. writes, NTA, you're not obligated to mourn someone that you didn't like or didn't even really know. And I think we've sort of broken this down, but it's like you're not mourning. You're putting on a ribbon. You're just going with the flow.
It's just social graces.
Maddie Lipari writes, YTA, you wear a ribbon in support of your coworkers' friends who may be mourning. Also, it's possible to mourn someone who isn't the greatest of people.
I think that sums it up very well.
You're not doing it for the person. You're doing it for the people who are there, the coworkers, the friends.
Nobody's really going to think like if you wear that ribbon, oh, you're wearing the ribbon, you must be so sad that they passed away. And it's like nobody is really taking that away. It's just more, again, you just stand out without it.